Hello all, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of topics from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics. The first article, an expansive land management policy is overdue, is taken from The Hindu, page number 9. This talks about a number of studies that have been conducted by the UNCCD, the FAO, as well as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that actually noted and observed that any kind of land management policy that did not take into consideration the multi-dimensional character of land has caused distress on the land, thereby leading to land degradation and the loss of the ecosystem services. The second article, it starts with the district, has been taken from the Indian Express, page number 11. It actually talks about how important it is for the policymakers to focus on tailoring the developmental strategies at the district level in order to achieve sustainable as well as inclusive economic growth. Followed by this, the third article is also taken from the Indian Express, more in store. This particularly talks about the recently launched world's largest grain storage plant at the cooperation level by the Prime Minister. Moving on, we will actually dwell into another article taken from The Hindu, page number, that is the science section. Will color molecules make quantum computers accessible? So this particular article talks about the recent breakthrough achieved by the researchers of the Kyushu University in Japan, where they have developed qubits that can operate at the room temperature by using color molecules or the chromophores. And here we look into what are qubits, how it is actually used in quantum computing, and what is the difference between quantum as well as the classical computing methods. Moving on, the last article for the day is taken from the Indian Express, page number 14. To fight climate change, Germany plans to store carbon dioxide underground offshore. Here we'll be dealing about the CCUS system, that is the carbon capture, utilization and storage technology, how it is actually benefited, and what are the challenges which are concerned with this particular technological advancement. Towards the end of the session, we will actually be solving few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. Embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses include robust research and development backed initiatives such as our daily news analysis, which gives us a comprehensive view program for a broader understanding of current affairs. Our NCERT program, a foundational course that covers all NCERT syllabus, which is crucial for the UPSC preparation. And followed by this, our mentorship program for personalized guidance and regular test series for systematic learning and assessment is available for your subscription. So begin your journey to becoming a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. The first article for the day, an expansive land management policy is overdue. So this particular article talks about the studies conducted by UNCCD, that is the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Then IPCC, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as well as FAO, that is the Food and Agricultural Organization. So the studies conducted by them have actually proved that any kind of land management policy that does not take into account the multidimensional character of land has eventually led to a stress on land, thereby creating land degradation, eventually leading to the loss of ecosystem. Okay. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the concept of land degradation as well as the global initiatives, and this can be mapped to GS paper 3 mains under conservation, environmental pollution and degradation. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question in 2020 on desertification, which reads, the process of desertification does not have climatic boundaries, justified with examples. So this particular topic of desertification and land degradation, how both of them are different, are very, very important for your mains examination in particular. Now let us get into the news. The studies that have been conducted by UNCCD, FAO as well as IPCC have noted that land management practices that have failed to take into account the multi-dimensional character of land has led to excessive stress on the land resources, has led to degradation and significant losses in the services that is produced by or provided by the ecosystem. Now let us actually understand what land degradation is all about. Okay. So now what is land degradation? According to GEF, this is the Global Environment Facility. So, according to the Global Environment Facility, land degradation is the deterioration or loss of the productive capacity of the soil for the present as well as the future. And this is caused by multiple forces, including extreme weather conditions, particularly drought. Whether it is completely natural? No, because it is also contributed by the human-induced or the anthropogenic processes, including the recent climate change that we are witnessing. Okay. And this particular land degradation endangers the livelihood of around 500 million people who rely on the forest as well as the land resources. Here, it is important to understand the difference between land degradation and desertification. Okay, so degradation can actually take place anywhere. It is not specific to any particular region. It is caused by multiple forces, like it can either be weather conditions, it can be conditions like drought, etc. Okay. Whereas if you see desertification, this is particularly confined to dry, subhumid, semi-arid regions. Okay. And this process actually decreases the biological productivity of drylands. Okay, the productivity of the drylands is actually further reduced due to natural or man-made factors. So this is basically the difference between land degradation as well as desertification. Now let us understand the impacts of land degradation and what is the urgency to deal with it. Okay, so now looking at the impacts. So the first impact is the economic cost. Okay, so the studies have actually proven that annually the loss of ecosystem services due to land degradation is around $6 trillion. Okay, so it is $6 trillion, and here it is important to understand what is this ecosystem service. The ecosystem service is nothing but any kind of activities or the output that is actually rendered or it is offered by the ecosystem that will benefit the human beings. You would have actually heard about different types of ecosystem services, like the provisioning service. This is actually products like the raw materials provided by the ecosystem. It includes food, water, medicines, wood, etc. So this is the provisioning services. The second one you would have heard about is regulating services. This actually helps us regulate the environmental conditions like the air quality regulation, then prevention of soil erosion, then GHG prevention as well as control of emission, pest and disease control, etc. And this will actually help us to maintain an ecological balance. Okay, so the next one is supporting services. Supporting services are nothing but these are the fundamental services that actually support the ecosystem services. Like this includes habitat provision, it includes biodiversity retention, it includes nutrient cycles, etc. Okay. And the last one is cultural services. These are the non-material benefits that are actually provided by the ecosystem to us, and it can include services like tourism, recreation, culture, as well as spiritual benefits. Okay, so these are the different types of ecosystem services, but then it is found that due to land degradation, the global economy loses around 6 trillion annually due to the loss of the ecosystem services. So moving ahead, let us actually see the second impact. Okay, so we saw that there is a loss of ecosystem service, that is there is a significant reduction in the services benefiting the humans or the social well-being of the human beings. The next one, let us look at how has the global recognition and the urgency been with respect to the land degradation. Okay, so the 2019 UN Convention to Combat Desertification has emphasized land degradation neutrality goal. And also followed by that, there are various policy recommendations which have been given by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which advises on the land management strategies to optimize the use and the reduce resource competition. Okay. And followed by that, the FAO report actually highlights the urgent need for sustainable management of land, soil as well as water resources, and this actually is under need for sustainable management. So apart from understanding the recommendation of each of it, like UNCCD, like IPCC and FAO, it is very, very important to understand the functioning, the mandate, the establishment, and the member countries who have actually signed it, that is the signatories of all these conventions. Okay. And for example, if you know the UNCCC, we must know that it has actually come into force in the year 1996. Okay. And it actually helps us to prevent or reverse the desertification and mitigate the effects of drought. Whereas if you see the IPCC, it was actually established by the WMO as well as the UNEP. This fact we must actually know, and it came into existence in 1998. Whereas if you see the FAO, it was established in the year 1945. This actually helps in the international efforts to defeat hunger and focus on nutrition and food security. So these are the impacts and the urgency on land degradation. Okay. Now let us look into the status of land degradation in India. So as per the Desertification and Land Degradation Atlas that has been published by ISRO, around 97.85 million hectares, that is 29.7% of India's total geographical area, that is the TGA, of around 328.78 million hectares had undergone land degradation. And also around 23.79% of the area undergoing degradation were contributed by which of the states? First is Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Ladakh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh and Telangana. Now here, if you look at this particular map, it actually symbolizes the different factors which are responsible for land degradation. So let us actually have a look at the map. If we see this West Bengal region, we can see water erosion has been the major reason, as well as this water logging has been the reason. If you see in the Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand region, where if you see in the Uttarakhand and the Uttar Pradesh region, we can see salinization as well as alkalinization being the major reasons for this land degradation. Whereas if you see in the Kashmir region, we have the barren rocky as well as the stony waste which is actually present here. And here if we see in the Rajasthan region, we actually see that wind erosion has been the major cause for land degradation. So this is the status of land degradation in India. Okay. So now let us move on to understand the challenges that India faces with respect to that of land degradation. The first challenge is the geographic as well as the demographic pressures. So here, first one is the limited geographical area versus high population density. So we all know that India is a small mass that supports a vast population, and this leads to overutilization and stress on the land resources. It is important to understand that India actually encompasses only 2.4% of the world's geographical area, but we actually host 17% of the global population. And so ultimately there is an immense pressure on the land, thereby leading to overutilization and stress on the land resources. Okay. The next one is there is a high dependency on agriculture. What is this? A large portion of India's population has relied on agriculture that puts continuous pressure on the land for productivity and leading to practices that may contribute to land degradation. Here we need to know that 55% of the total geographical area is arable in India. What do you mean by arable? The area or the land which is suitable for agriculture. And we need to understand only 22% is the forest area, and the remaining actually has deserts, mountain, etc. So predominantly having 55% of the arable area, what happens is majority of the population depend on agriculture, and therefore there is actually continuous stress or pressure on the land. Moving ahead, we need to see the next challenge is land degradation and environmental challenges, where first one is there is a risk of substantial land degradation where factors such as erosion, soil acidity, alkalinity, salinity, etc. actually contribute to degradation of to about 30% of India's land, which impacts the agricultural output as well as biodiversity. If agricultural output is actually affected, then farmers are affected. If the yield is affected, then it actually leads to increased poverty, etc. The next one is the impact of climate change. So there has been adverse impact of climate change on agriculture because of rising temperature that actually leads to changing precipitation patterns and increased frequency of extreme weather events. This has further aggravated land degradation, thereby it actually affects the food security and nutritional security of the country. So moving ahead, what are the other socio-economic and cultural factors that are actually affecting the India's degradation is that first one is rapid urbanization and industrialization. Okay, so this is nothing but there is a huge demand for land for infrastructural development, for urban expansion, etc., and also for industrial activities. So this actually leads to land use conflicts and escalation of land prices, and there is changes in the land rights. Moving ahead, there are cultural and social dynamics. This includes nothing but land, we need to understand, is culturally significant in India. It is culturally significant in India and has a unique ownership patterns. That is, this particular land should be put into this particular type of use is what is called as this ownership pattern. It depends on the type of ownership that land is into. Okay, so ownership patterns and land use decisions are influenced by traditional practices which are further complicating this land management. Moving on, the next challenge that India faces is administrative and policy challenges. First is the land management in India is actually sectoral, okay, because different departments have their own approaches. So thereby we do not have a unified policy or any framework for land management in India. So fragmented land use policies due to departmental approaches. Followed by that, there is decentralized land management. We know that land actually falls under the purview of the state governments. So state governments manage the land, creating administrative complexity. Next one is regulatory and knowledge gaps. Okay, so there is always a lack of integrated planning. There is short-term planning bias and regulatory barriers that hinder the sustainable land management in India. Now let us see what are the possible solutions and the recommendations that the study had actually given us. The first one is establishment of multi-stakeholder platforms. Okay, this is at district level and the sub-district levels for integrated planning and implementation. We need to have a multi-stakeholder platform. And also, as per Article 243ZD of the Constitution, there has to be proper management plans. Okay, so what is this 243? Article 243 actually states that in every state, at the district level, there has to be a departmental planning committee, okay, which will actually consolidate the plans of the panchayats and the municipalities and develop a draft development plan for the entire district. Okay, so this is what is Article 243, where there has to be activation of district planning committees over there in every state and every district. Next one is adoption of a landscape approach, where access the land potential, allocating the land for appropriate uses and balanced objectives actually have to be there. Next one is embracing climate smart practices. This is nothing but you need to align your land management with climate objectives for sustainable agriculture as well as the biodiversity conservation. The next one is integrated management. That is, I told you, right, it is always departmental or sectoral in India. So we need to actually forego with that and engage stakeholders at all the levels in order to address the climate change, in order to ensure your food security as well as resolve your biodiversity crisis. So moving forward, let us actually have a quick look at the global as well as Indian initiatives or efforts in order to mitigate this land degradation. First one, let's look at the global initiatives. That is the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. It is a legally binding convention for sustainable land management. This is very, very important. Next is the Bond Challenge, which focuses on restoring 350 million hectares of land by 2030. Next one is G20 Global Land Initiative. This aims to reduce the degraded land by 50% by the year 2040. And if we look at few of the initiatives by India, the first one is National Action Program to Combat Desertification. This addresses desertification. Since 2001, it has been addressing all the events. The next one is National Mission on Green India. This tries to protect and enhance the forest cover by 2024. So this has been in place since 2014 and it has been extended to over a decade. Next one is National Afforestation Program. It focuses on afforestation of degraded forest lands since the year 2000. Next is the Desert Development Program, which minimizes drought since the year 1995. And the last one is Integrated Watershed Management Program, which aims at restoring the ecological balance and creating rural employment. The next article that we'll be discussing about is It All Starts with the District. Okay, so in this particular article, we will actually discuss about how important it is for the policymakers to focus on tailoring the developmental strategies at the district level in order to create or to achieve sustainable as well as inclusive economic growth. Okay, so this particular article discusses about local governance, and here we'll be discussing about district development and planning. And we can map this to GS paper 2 under mains under devolution of powers and finances up to local levels and challenges therein. So moving forward, let us actually look at the previous year question. There has been a question in 2018 that actually had asked about the core strategies and transformation of aspirational districts in India. So this particular topic becomes an important topic of discussion. So now let us actually look into what the news is. In order to create sustainable and inclusive economic growth, it is important for India's policymakers to focus on tailoring the developmental strategies at the district level. Now let us look at how and why it has to be done. Okay. So first of all, let us understand the social fabric and the diversity of India. Okay. So India is a country of great diversity, as all of us know, and this variety is vividly reflected in all its districts. To be very short, I can say that every district in India actually depicts the entire culture of the country. So it can also be called as a microcosm. Let us see. Each district acts like a small version of the entire country, that is a microcosm showcasing a rich mix of cultures, languages as well as economic conditions. Moving ahead, the average Indian district actually has the total number of districts in India as of November 2023 is 797 in number. Okay. So, an average Indian district has approximately 1.86 million residents, that is the population of which is larger than that of countries like Singapore as well as UAE. And this highlights also the complexity of the governance challenges which will be persistent in this particular level. Okay. So, to the policymaker, understanding the full scale of this diversity is very, very important in order to plan as well as to craft the necessary policies for that particular district. Now, let us see the district level development in India so far, what have been the success and what were the disparities that it had faced. Okay. So, first let us actually look at the positive trends, that is the successes that have been in the district level development in India. First, the positive trend is that there have been educational advancement. Okay, according to the data of National Family Health Survey, that is NFHS 5, the data shows that mothers have equal or in fact higher education than the fathers in 195 among 707 districts. The next success is that there has been a huge financial inclusion, that is over 15% of the districts had greater than 90% of women with the saving accounts. And moving ahead, there has been huge or good health progress, that is over 91% of the districts actually had reported more than 70% of facility-based births, that is institutional births in the last 5 years. Now let us see the disparities, that is the uneven progress. Okay. So the first point is varying performance within the states. There have been noted disparities in educational outcomes within the states. Like you can see, there are educational outcome disparities within Karnataka. The districts inside Karnataka had varying levels of education. In Arunachal Pradesh, the same trend had been there, and in Telangana also the same trend was observed. Next one is islands of underdevelopment. Okay. So NFHS had actually noted that there have been clusters of districts with the similar performance or similar underperformance and underdevelopment. And also, if we look at the income disparities, the urban districts accounted for a significant share of wages and jobs, while a wage gap between the top 70 and bottom 305 districts. Okay. For instance, to actually see here, the urban districts actually constituted 30% of all the districts in India, and this 30% of all districts, they actually constituted or accounted to more than 55% of all the wages paid to around 45% of all the jobs. So such was the condition of disparity. So moving forward, now let us look at the top-down as well as the bottom-up approaches in framing a policy. and what are the advantages and disadvantages of the same. Okay, so any kind of policy or any kind of initiative that is brought about by the government is either implemented in a top down approach fashion or a bottom up fashion. Okay, so let us see what is the top down policy. The advantage of the top down policy is the policy is actually framed and then the same is actually implemented in all the other states or districts of the country. If we see the advantages, the national programs actually help set a uniform standard and ensure that the basic services across the vastly diverse regions are actually catered to. The examples of such programs include Swachh Bharat, that is meant for sanitation, Ayushman Bharat in the healthcare sector. Then you have the Poshan Abhiyan that actually caters to malnutrition and nutrition security in the country, and MGNREGS, which actually caters to daily wages or the rural jobs. However, this particular top-down approach schemes actually have certain limitations, such as first one is limited flexibility. Okay, they may struggle to adapt to specific needs and circumstances of diverse districts. The second one is one size fits all approach does not apply to diverse districts, and it actually brings unique challenges and risks to the implementation of the program. The next one is these kind of one size fits all or a national policy that aims to cater to the entire district, which are diverse in itself, discourages the local participation. Okay, and here the local participation is missing. It can discourage the ownership, and thereby the long-term sustainability of the initiative is actually questioned. Now moving on, let us see the bottom-up policies of the country. Okay, so the bottom-up policy is characterized by three key pillars. Okay, first one, it is data-driven decision making. Okay, that is what you mean by is there is timely and accurate collection of data or availability of data in the district level that enables evidence-based interventions. The second one is best practice sharing. Okay, what do you mean by best practice sharing? There are channels which are created for the districts to learn from the success of each other district, which fosters innovation and replication. That is, if district A performs better than B, then B actually replicates the policies that have been followed by A. Okay, so that actually fosters innovation as well as replication. The final one is in the bottom-up approach, the key feature or the characteristic is the interdepartmental collaboration. Okay, that is breaking down the silos. The silos working is actually broken down, and there is cooperation that is incentivized across the departments, and this will essentially lead to the holistic development of the districts. So, advantages of the bottom-up policy is that there is greater responsiveness to the local needs, and also there is increased community participation in the policy making. Now, one such example of the bottom-up approach policy is the aspirational district program. Let us actually see what are the features of this program. So, this particular program was launched in the year 2018 and its focus was on deprived districts utilizing data-driven. This is actually one of the major feature of the bottom-up approach, monitoring to address the gaps in areas like health, education, agriculture, water resources, as well as financial inclusion. Moving on, it had positively impacted the lives of approximately 25 crore people in 112 districts across the country. And according to Niti Aayog, this includes improvement in health, child nutrition, and education. If we see health, the percentage of pregnant women registered for antenatal care within the first trimester had increased from 68% to a remarkable 89% in 2023 from the 2018 levels. And in child nutrition, if you see, the percentage of underweight children under 6 years actually reduced from 20.6 to 9.2% in 2023, which is of course a good sign. Next one is education. The transition rates of the school children have also improved significantly, and basic infrastructure had been there that has been reaching the saturation. So moving on from recipient to drivers. So this particular caption, it actually focuses on how the districts have to be the drivers of growth rather than being mere recipients of the directions or the features of following any particular national scheme. So here, how can this be achieved? It must be achieved through a transitioning mindset. What do you mean by transitioning mindset? There has to be a shift of perception from passive recipients of directions or features or the directions given by the central government to implement a national program. Rather than that, it has to be active drivers of development. That is whatever floats its boat, right? That is whatever suits the diversity of that particular district. The second one is it has to overcome economic inactivity, which means that there has to be addressing of the economic specialization with the schemes like the ODOP. ODOP here means one district, one product. This focuses on promoting development of locally unique products in 767 districts of the country, and all this is actually based on so there has to be a following up, or you need to follow the lines of Michael Porter's theory of clusters. Okay, this actually means that you need to create clusters of districts which are individually good in certain activities, and then actually connect it. That is, interconnectedness of this district should be there. That is, leverage the concept for localized competitiveness by identifying and building on inherent strengths of each district and thereby interconnecting them so that you actually focus on the holistic development of all the districts of the country. Now, what is the need for tailored policies and data-driven governance? Let us actually see. The need for these tailored policies include, first one size fits all approaches actually fail. That too in a diverse country like India. India's diversity dictates that the broad brush policies are unlikely to yield optimal results across its districts. The second one is coordination is critical. Here, the collaboration between central, state as well as the district level governance structure combined with the local autonomy and the accountability mechanisms is indispensable. Next, the power of data. Data is very important. Quality district level data is actually a prerequisite and a mandate for targeted policy making. And districts need timely information on key metrics in order to assess their progress and identify what is the areas for intervention that is required in the district. Okay. Next one is transparency and accountability. Initiatives like the District Development Index by Maharashtra, this can be quoted as a case study. This fosters transparency and it also, ensures that there is accountability of the stakeholders over here. The next article that we will be discussing about is More in Store. So this particular article talks about the launching of the world's largest grain storage plant in the cooperative sector that has been launched by the Prime Minister recently. So here we'll be looking at what are the key features of this grain storage scheme, what are the challenges that India faces with respect to that of grain storage, and how significant this particular scheme is going to be. And here this is important from food security perspective. Okay, so this can be mapped to Indian economy under prelims as well as agriculture and food security under GS paper 3 mains. So moving forward, let us see the previous year question. In 2019, there was a question on the reformative steps that has to be taken by the government to make the food grain distribution system more effective. And in 2022 also, there was a similar question on the challenges that the PDS, that is the public distribution system, actually faces. So this particular topic, anything related to agriculture as such, is very, very important. Now let us understand this particular news. The Prime Minister has launched the world's largest grain storage scheme in the cooperative sector with the inauguration of around 11 godowns in the primary agriculture credit societies in 11 states. Okay, so what are the primary agriculture credit societies are? These institutions, they actually provide credit to the farmers at the village level. Okay. So now let us actually move on. Now let us understand what is the need for the grain storage scheme. The first need why it is required is India faces a challenge of high production versus storage capacity. Okay, so India's total or annual food grain production is around 3,100 lakh tons, while the existing storage can only accommodate 47% of this entire 3,100 lakh tons. Okay. The next one is The management of surplus is actually a challenge for India, because what happens is the current MSP as well as the procurement regime of the government has motivated the farmers to produce more, as a result of which the production actually leads to the surplus production of food grains, and management of that surplus has become very, very difficult. Okay, that is, the MSP and the procurement regime has led to surplus production and post-harvest losses by the farmers, and this is actually forcing the farmers to sell their food grains at a lesser price. Next one is wastage of food grains. Okay, so there is insufficient storage capacity that results in significant wastage as well as the lower prices for the farmers. Followed by that, the pest infestation and spoilage, where we see lack of maintenance, pest control and storage technology has led to spoilage as well as infestation of pests in these food grains. Moving forward, now let us actually look at the key features of the scheme. Okay, so first one is this particular scheme actually aims at increasing the storage capacity, which aims to add around 700 lakh tons over 5 years, and it has a target of around 2,150 lakh tons, okay, in 5 years frame. Next one, the financial allocation, if you see, approximately rupees 1.25 lakh crore is actually allocated for this particular scheme. The next one, there will be establishment of godowns with a 2,000 ton capacity that will be established at the PAX level, okay, Primary Agricultural Credit Society level in every block. And then if you see, the implementing agency of the scheme is the Ministry of Cooperation. Now let us actually see the significance of the grain storage scheme. First one is reduced wastage, that is decentralized storage will help to minimize the food grain wastage, thereby enhancing the national food security and the nutritional security of the country. Next one, it will provide additional income to the farmers. How? By allowing PACs to diversify the business activities, the scheme will boost the farmers' income. Next one, there will be prevention of distress sales, as we saw that the farmers are actually forced to actually sell their food grains due to the surplus at a lesser price. So this scheme will prevent all the distress, thereby enabling the farmers to secure better prices for their crops. Next one is reduced import dependence. Here, by improving the domestic storage and grain management, the scheme aims to reduce India's reliance on the food grain imports. The next article that we'll be discussing about is, will color molecules make quantum computers accessible? So this particular article talks about the researchers of the Kyushu University of Japan having developed qubits that can operate at room temperature using color molecules. Okay. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is quantum computing, what are qubits, and how is quantum computing different from that of classical computing, its challenges as well as its advantages. And this is a part of emerging technology, as we all know, and we can map it to GS paper 3 under science and technology and awareness in the field of computers and for the mains examination. So moving forward, there have been previous year questions, and specifically if you see in 2022, there has been a prelims question on qubit, which reads, which one of the following is the context in which the term qubit is actually mentioned? So the answer was quantum computing. So here discussion about the quantum computing becomes relevant for your examination. So now let us get into the news. Recently, the researchers from the Kyushu University of Japan have announced a breakthrough in developing qubits that operate at room temperature using color molecules, marking a significant advancement in the field of quantum computing. So here there are a number of things that we need to understand. First is, what are qubits and how they are different from that of bits. The next is, what is quantum computing and how it is different from that of the classical computing. Next, we will understand what are these color molecules. These are the chromophores, and let us actually see how it actually helps in developing these kind of qubits. Okay. So moving ahead, let us understand what is quantum computing first. Okay. So quantum computing is actually based on quantum mechanics, and it is used for solving complex problems, and generally it is manifold or multiple times faster than that of classical computers. Next one, it leverages the unique behavior of quantum physics such as superposition, entanglement, as well as quantum interference. Now let us actually have a look at what is the difference between quantum computing and classical computing. Okay. The first point is The quantum computing operates with qubits that can represent 0 and 1 or both simultaneously. So now it is important to understand what is a qubit or a bit. Okay. So generally, bit is nothing but it is used in classical computing. A bit is nothing but it is the basic unit of information. It is synonymous to that of the human cell. We know, right? The cells in our body is the basic unit of information that is present in our body. Similarly, a bit actually carries the basic information for the operations or the functioning of the classical or the conventional computers. Okay. So this can be represented as 0 or 1. Whereas if you see qubits are the quantum equivalents of a bit. Okay, and it can be represented as either 0 or 1, or it can also be 0 and 1 simultaneously. And this process is called superposition. Okay, now let us understand the difference. So this operates with qubits that can represent 0 and 1 or both simultaneously. Whereas in classical computing, it operates transistors that can only depict either 0 or 1. The next difference is that the power increments are dramatic with the number of qubits, whereas here the power increments are always in the ratio 1:1 with the number of transistors. The third point is there is a probability or the possibility of higher error rates and need to be stored at ultra cold temperatures, and it also requires vacuum to be present. Okay. Next one is here there are lower error rates and it can perform at room temperature. The last difference is the quantum computing, it is used for performing complex tasks such as data analytics, such as simulations as well as optimization, whereas the classical computing is best at performing the everyday tasks. So moving forward, now let us understand what are qubits and what are the challenges associated with that of the qubits. Okay. So, a qubit or a quantum bit is a basic unit of quantum information, as I told you, and qubits can exist in two states which can represent 1 and 0. However, they can also exist in both states at the same time, and this is called as the quantum state. So, what are the challenges associated with this qubits is that, as I told you, it can be represented as 0 and 1 at the same time, which is called as the superposition. Maintaining this fragile superposition is very difficult, as the qubits have the tendency of losing the quantum properties when they come in contact with the external environment. So, when this process actually happens, that is the losing of quantum properties of the qubit is called as decoherence. And the next one is the room temperature operation. We saw that most of the current qubits, they are capable of performing only better in ultra cold temperatures as well as the vacuums, and they are not like the classical computers to perform or function in the room temperatures. Now let us understand the recent breakthrough that have been brought by the researchers of the Kyushu University. So here what happened is they had developed qubits that can operate at the room temperature by using color molecules, which are also called as chromophores, right? And this was actually possible by making use of metal organic frameworks. So what are these metal organic frameworks is that they have metal atoms which are connected by the color molecules or a special color molecules called as the chromophore. Okay. So what are these color molecules? If you see in this particular diagram, the color molecule here, it is the chromophore, and it has the capacity to actually absorb specific wavelengths from light, okay? And then when it is actually scattered, then the observable color will be blue or green, etc. So the best example of this chromophore is the chlorophyll, which absorbs specific spectrum of light, and after getting scattered, then the observable color is green. And this is responsible for the green color of the leaves. So this they were actually able to perform, and they were able to develop the qubits that can operate at room temperature also. Now let us understand how the color molecules help in quantum computing. So what happens is when a chromophore, that is a color molecule, absorbs light, there is an electron that gets excited to a higher energy state. Okay. So this electron that is actually excited to a higher energy state that can interact with a neighbor, thereby splitting its energy, and it excites the neighbor too. So first there is an high energy because of which the electron is excited, and after reaching that it can interact with the neighbor, splitting its energy, thereby the neighbor also becomes excited. So this creates two molecules with the electrons in a unique state, and this is called as a triplet state. So the subtle movement of these molecules within the MOF, that is the metal organic framework, it actually helps in maintaining the two molecules in a delicate superposition. And this superposition is a key ingredient in order to make a qubit that works at room temperature. Now, as I told you, we saw that metal organic framework, right? So the component that was actually used here was zirconium, and the color molecule, that is the chromophore used, was the pentacene. The next article that we'll be discussing is, to fight climate change, Germany plans to store carbon dioxide underground offshore, and this particular article discusses about Germany developing the CCUS strategy, that is the carbon capture, utilization and storage strategy, in order to meet its 2045 net zero climate targets. Okay, so in this particular article we'll be discussing about what is the CCUS, as it is important for the climate change discussion, and this can be mapped to climate change under prelim syllabus as well as conservation, environmental pollution and degradation under GS paper 3 mains examination. If we have a look at the previous year questions, there have been questions in the year 2022 in mains which asked about the global warming and its effects on global climate. And moving on, in 2021, there had been a prelims question on blue carbon. Thereby, the CCUS, that is carbon capture and storage utilization, is very, very important for the examination. Okay. So now let us actually get to understand what this particular article is discussing about. So Germany is developing a CCUS strategy in order to meet its 2045 net zero climate target. Now let us get to understand what is this carbon capture, utilization and storage technique. Okay. So CCUS basically stands for carbon capture, utilization and storage. This is nothing but we capture the carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, before being emitted into the atmosphere. We utilize it for different processes and we actually store it as a final, step. Next one is, there are a group of technologies which are involved, which are used for separating this carbon dioxide from the other molecules of gases, because specifically carbon dioxide actually leads to the increase in the GHGs, which leads to increased temperature, which leads to global warming, ice melting or glaciers melting, sea level rise, etc. Okay, so now let us see. It is a group of technology, that is CCUS is a group of technology that aims to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, particularly the carbon dioxide, from the industrial processes and power generation. There are different steps which are actually involved in the CCUS. First one is a capture. So this involves separating the CO2 from other gases that are emitted from the industries after the industrial processes. And there are different techniques like the scrubbing, the membrane separation, etc., which are used for separating this carbon dioxide from the other gases. And then it is sent via pipelines for utilization in other refineries in order to increase the oil production and to produce other kind of synthetic substances like methanol, gasoline, etc. And also for making the construction materials like concrete, etc. And after which it is actually stored in the aquifers and other geological formations. Okay, so let us see. Capturing involves separating the carbon dioxide from other gases emitted by the industrial facilities or power plants and capturing it, where you have a lot of techniques like chemical scrubbing, membrane separation, adsorption, etc. Next process is to utilize the stored or the captured carbon. Okay, so whatever carbon dioxide you have captured, we utilize in a number of processes, like instead of directly emitting into the atmosphere, we use it for enhanced oil recovery. Why do I say enhanced oil recovery? Is that where the oil is stored underground in the oil refineries, it is highly viscous. But when it is injected with CO2, this reduces the viscosity of the oil, which enables it to flow or rush upwards to the production wells. Okay, so this is enhanced oil recovery. Next one is creating synthetic fuels like methanol and gasoline, and finally producing building materials like concrete and other construction materials. The final stage after the capture as well as utilization is the storage, which is stored underground in geological formations such as the depleted oil and gas reservoirs, in aquifers, that is specifically deep saline aquifers as well as coal seams. So moving forward, looking at this picture, we can actually understand the first step in this is capture of carbon dioxide. That is carbon dioxide extracted from natural gas fuels, factories, power plants, etc. And then it is actually transported via pipelines, trucks and ships. There it is used for variety of purposes like the enhanced oil recovery in an underground reservoir where it reduces the viscosity of the oil and enables it to gush up to the production wells, thereby enhancing the oil recovery. The final step is storage, where CO2 pumped into the underground reservoirs or the rock formations or geological formations where CO2 is permanently stored. So in this way, there is actually reduction in the greenhouse gas and thereby reduction in the pollution as well. Now let us look at the benefits of CCUS. First one, as we already know, it reduces the greenhouse gas emissions as we capture CO2 from the industrial sources and power plants, significantly reducing emissions. The second one is we create economic opportunities because, the technological advancement always spurs innovation and the job creation in new technological sectors. Next one, there is clean energy transition. Okay, so this enables the continued use of fossil fuels. However you use the fossil fuels, you will use it with lesser emissions by capturing and storing carbon dioxide. So moving forward, let us see the challenges associated with these technological advancements, okay, especially the CCUS. First is there is a high cost involved, that is, development and implementation of CCUS technology require a huge amount of investment. Next is the technological limitation. Some CCUS technologies, especially for the carbon dioxide storage, is not fully developed in many parts of the world. Okay, so it is not available for widespread usage. Next is license to increase emissions. That is, the development of this method like CCUS will actually motivate the industries in order to emit more because they have CCUS in place. Okay, so here it may encourage the industries to delay reducing their carbon footprint by relying on this CCUS, which actually involves a simple capturing and storage of carbon dioxide despite your emissions into the atmosphere. Okay. Next one is environmental concerns. It has a potential for, that is, the CCUS method has a potential of carbon dioxide leakage, which will pose risk to the soil, groundwater, and may trigger seismic activity as well. Now let us solve few prelims as well as the mains practice question. The first question reads, consider the following applications: enhanced oil recovery, creation of synthetic fuels, producing building materials. For which of the above can the carbon dioxide captured in the CCUS be utilized? So all three is correct. So thereby your answer will be option D. Moving on to the second question, the blocked sphere sometimes mentioned in the news is associated with which of the following? It is associated with quantum computing. So here the answer will be option B. Moving on to question number 3, consider the following statements about primary agricultural credit societies, that is the PACs. PACs serve as the last link in a 3-tier cooperative credit structure at the state level. Yes, this is correct. They are regulated by the SEBI, that is the Security and Exchange Board of India. This is actually wrong as it is regulated by the state governments as well as the Reserve Bank of India. So since only statement 1 is correct, the answer will be option A. Question number 4, consider the following statements about the district planning committees in India. The constitution mandates that the chairperson of the district planning committee must be elected from among its members by the elected members of the district panchayat. This is actually wrong. So as per Article 243 of the Constitution of India, all the members of the District Planning Committee are to be appointed by the governor of the state. This is also wrong. So the option or the answer will be option D, neither 1 nor 2. The fifth question, consider the following pairs, the initiative, and it is launched by which of the following? So climate neutral now. It has been launched by UNFCCC. This is correctly matched. 1 trillion trees initiative. It is by WEF, that is the World Economic Forum. This is correctly matched. Then the bond challenge by the IUCN. This is also correctly matched. So how many of the above pairs are correctly matched? Since all the 3 are matched, the answer will be option C. So now moving on to the mains practice question. The question reads, analyze the severity of the land degradation in India and its implications on socio-economic and environmental sustainability. discuss the strategies that India should adopt for effective land restoration and sustainable land management. So, the approach to this particular question is divided into the introduction, body, and the conclusion, where in the introduction, we will define what is land degradation. That is, it is a critical issue affecting India's ecological and economic stability. In the body, we will actually mention the extent of land degradation in India. We'll talk about the socio-economic implications that it actually causes, the environmental implications, and we need to suggest more strategies for land restoration as we had discussed in the article. Moving on, we will talk about the initiatives, that is the national as well as the global initiatives like the Bond Challenge, etc. And we'll conclude the answer by mentioning the sustainable land management is key to economic, social as well as the environmental prosperity in India. This concludes the discussion of the daily news analysis. For regular updates, please like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.